All right there, folks. Welcome back. Another edition of Afternoon Drive live from Drew's house. Hope everybody's doing okay out there. It is boy, the weather has been good here. We had a little bit of that snow last week, and well, that went away really quickly. How about these beautiful 70-degree days? We've been taking the dogs to the beach, all that good stuff. Been fun. Dogs love the beach. What's that little patch of sun? Ooh, ooh, fancy. Now there's another one over there. This is life at home with no producers. By the way, I don't say this enough. I should give a big thanks to all the producers that have this show, for those of you who don't know, is based out of Newburyport. And the studio has been really for months pretty much shut down. Very small amounts of people can go in at a time. And our producers here for this show have been literally running in at certain times of the day to get these shows into the system and ready to go, and getting us on the air, radio, TV, and up on the live stream. So Tyler Neufeld, Caleb Noble, Lily Doucette, who I know is away at school now. A lot of people doing a lot of great work, and of course Sarah Hayden too. So thank you to everybody for making this show happen here. As you know, I haven't seen anybody in person in a while. Kind of weird, but anyway, I miss you all, and thank you all for making this show happen still and keeping it going. We have a new president-elect. How about that? Pretty big news there. This is probably going to get ugly through the courts, I think, with the president. President Trump has, a lot has even happened since Joe Biden became president-elect. He fired Mark Esper, defense. He's already said he's going to fight it in the courts. He's accusing the system of being fraudulent, and I don't know. It's going to be an interesting few days to see, interesting few weeks to see where this all goes. Joe Biden's speech on Saturday night, didn't it feel like the whole world was just sitting at home watching that? Hopefully they were, because it's a pandemic. There's really not much to do. But I just had this feeling, like just checking social media and everything, it felt like everybody was at home just watching Joe Biden on Saturday night. President-elect Joe Biden. So I know my wife Sarah and I were with the dogs, but the world has changed. And on that note, I'm going to bring in somebody who's just really, really smart about all this stuff. Former Army Major, combat veteran, Mike Lyons. He's a man who he has served our country. And in recent years, he's been heard all over the country he's a very, very good at breaking down combat situations, knows a lot of the policies of the world. Besides the fact that he knows a lot just about U.S. policy in this election and what it's going to mean bringing Joe Biden on, our stance across the world is assuming going to change quite a bit under a Biden presidency. So we're going to bring in former Army Major Mike Lyons right now. He's great. I think you're going to enjoy this. Let's get right to him. All right, welcome back. Afternoon Drive here. My first guest, first time on this show, although we've had him on several other different radio stations over the years, former Army Major, combat veteran, Mike Lyons. How are you, sir?
Hey, Drew, great to be with you. I really appreciate the time.
Good to see you virtually. Where are we coming to you from here today? Where are you at?
I'm in Yonkers, New York, just outside of New York City, still kind of in the heart of pandemic central, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all kind of getting that way now, hunkering down a little bit. The streets of New York, just like the streets of Boston, were a little bit crazy here over the last few days. A new president-elect in Joe Biden. First of all, I know you have thoughts on all this stuff, but what are your thoughts on just how the last week played out?
Well, from foreign policy, national security perspective, a lot of things are going to be turned on its head. I think the Biden administration will bring in a completely different set of foreign policy advisors that'll be literally everything opposite of Donald Trump. I mean, you could start, first of all, with the relationship with Iran. I think that's going to be at risk from the perspective of we're going to probably try to get back in the nuclear deal. We're going to do a lot more there. I think the relationship we have at the state of Israel is going to be somewhat in danger as well. So there's a lot going on with regard to a new administration, given what the Trump administration did the past 4 years.
What has it been like? Because it's been tough to get a feel from the generals. It seemed like a lot of the generals were big President Trump supporters maybe at the beginning. It feels like maybe that turned a little bit. You get certain positions, certain people that are fired from. I don't exactly know. What is the feel of most of the generals, the people that have served this country, of this president? I know that's a very general answer, general question, but.
Well, so I'd say the general officers, put country first over everything, first and foremost, and so that's where their perspective lies. I think some of them have become political. I know you look at the fact that this president tried to put some in his cabinet, Secretary Mattis, for example, retired four-star John Kelly, and it didn't go well. And I think that doesn't do the military any good when you have people that were selected for those jobs and then can't get, kind of flip that switch. But maybe we should not have that expectation. I would not like to see former people in uniform now, kind of cross over, because the political environment right now is just so challenging. And while they are political animals, I mean, general officers are political animals. They wouldn't be there if they didn't get to that spot. But, just given where things are with social media and how things work, I'm just not sure it's in the best interest of the country in order to take, to cross over that bright line between the civilian world and the military world.
What I know about the military is that most people that have served our country, they like order. I can imagine a lot of the firing, and that probably doesn't go over well within the White House, but.
Right. And again, people in the military do get relieved for, certain things, incompetence. And so, but the president you saw today now fires the secretary, Mark Esper. I knew that he had been at odds with him for a long time. They claim it's going back till June, but I can tell you from people I've talked to that it's likely gone back before that. Mm-hmm. And, you get on this president's wrong side, it's really difficult to kind of get back on the right side, given his personality. And it is what it is. So if the president ends up, for whatever reason, let's say these votes get overturned and he somehow stays in office, he'll have a new Secretary of Defense. But the bottom line is, I think more people are focused now on what the Secretary of Defense job and what the Pentagon looks like in a Biden administration.
What is give me a little bit of background too, because so many times we're just talking business. A little bit of your background in particular. Where have you served? How'd you get into it? Can you give me that in a nutshell?
Sure. I've been doing military analysis for about the last 18 years. Started at the beginning of the Gulf War. Given the fact that I was a combat vet in the first Gulf War, I commanded a firing battery during the Desert Storm. I was part of the kind of the initial the right hook, so to speak, that Norman Schwarzkopf speaks to. So I was in the lead element of the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. So I saw 4 days of combat, saw everything kind of pass through us. I can tell you this, it was no match back then. It was just, we had all great equipment, we had great intel, and we really kind of went through. And what's really going to be like the last major tank battle, I think, in our time. I don't see us, having that kind of a battle, that kind of warfare again. And ever since then, I'm a fellow at the Modern War Institute at West Point. I currently work up at the Military Academy now too in their development group. So I've been very close, and it's all my background is with regard to military history and national security, public policy.
That was when you talk about being in that kind of combat. That's something obviously you never forget. And you mentioned how you had all the advances in weaponry. I think you just pretty much gave it away that maybe is not quite the same anymore. I mean, still the U.S. the superpower, but there's different kinds of battles out there now, right? Yeah,
that's a great point. A lot of it has to do with, if we get the enemy to fight the battle we want to fight, then it'll be no match, because we have tremendous air superiority. We've got the communications channels. We have those things. But to fight this terrorism battle that exists on the streets of Baghdad or on the streets of these cities in the Middle East, that's not a battle we want to fight, because those ones are bloody. They're often house to house, and we don't get to use the advantage of our technology to do that. And so, we fight in the old days. Also, you fight warfare with 5 square blocks. You called it war. You carpet bombed it. That was it. But in today's world, the enemy we have is completely interthread within the civilian society, and we won't go after civilians on any level if there's any chance of that being happen. But drone technology, other things that we have, give us a little advantage. We just value life so much that we're not willing to take the kind of casualties our enemies are, and as they embed themselves with the civilian world. But it does still make for a situation where we're likely going to have some.
When you talk about, and this will be my last one on the personal service, but when you talk about like Desert Storm, what is it? What's the one thing that sticks with you? The one story, and because the one that you can share anyway. I'm sure there's a million of them that are imprinted on you forever. But what's the one story that you tell people when you think back to that time?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think first of all, I prepared my whole adult life to do that. I went to West Point. I studied history. I studied the art of war. I spent Christmas in a war zone. I remember reading books of soldiers that did that during World War II,
Mhm.
and so it was a privilege to serve. We saw the Cold War that I was in. But I also felt that we as Americans have to fight a certain way. I'll tell you a quick story. We came upon a bunch of Iraqi soldiers that had their fingertips blown off, and they needed help, and we helped them do that. And I had a translator in my unit, and I asked them to figure out, kind of what happened. How was just their hands shot? I don't kind of get it. And as it turns out, they were trying to surrender to another American force, and the American force ended up shooting at them, with their hands up. And I took from that is that while we're here doing, warfare is in taking lives, and it has all that in, there is a certain amount of humility you got to have in there. And so I was glad my unit was disciplined and structured. We didn't do those kinds of things, and we reported those kinds of things up. And I was still a little bit disappointed, though, that my units to the left and to the right of me, had that kind of incidents. Because unfortunately, in the fog of war, people, if it was a mistake, that was one thing. But multiple people with their fingers shot off, to me, means that they were a little bit wanton and reckless. And we just can't have that in our country.
That's interesting. How about one on the, because that's obviously kind of a negative United States one. Is there one moment of kind of, whether it be just loyalty to the person next to you, or just you said that line right there that I hear every person in the military serve. It's a privilege to serve. I mean, you say that all the time, which is fascinating because you're going into these horrible situations sometimes. What always amazes me, you're just a different breed when you say that.
Yeah, I think that what I took from it also was that the bottom line is that the American culture has a tremendous sense of protection of the force that we might never have had before. But I got to see the equipment that we captured on the Iraqi side, and frankly, the vehicles that they were driving in were crap. They were, they were, if they got hit by a round, everybody was going to die inside them. We protect our force, and I think that. So many times I could tell you, 2:00 in the morning, another thing, at 2:00 in the morning, we're having a meeting, and I'm sitting there saying to myself, my gosh, why are we up at 2:00 in the morning? We got to get up at 6. We're moving the next day. And, the colonel's out there having this meeting. And sure enough, the Iraqis were dumb enough to try to launch some kind of counterattack on us. And everybody was up. Everybody turns their night sights on, like the best technology. Everybody saw it. So the whole thing was over in 10 minutes. But the bottom line is that only happens in our country because we have the equipment and we bring it all to bear. We train hard on it, and we have tremendous confidence. Like I said, I was tremendously confident we were going to do well. I know that's a kind of a crazy thing to say when you go into combat because a lot of things can go off.
Are you at all? I guess every certain mission, every battle, every whatever since then has its own set of unique circumstances. I understand that.
Yeah.
Are you at all? Do you feel like the U.S. needs to play this kind of power where we are involved in so many conflicts? Are you disappointed with how many conflicts the United States has been in over the last couple of decades?
No, I am. I think that we need to be out of them. I think we've got troops in Syria. They need to be out. The president, for some of the negative things he's done on the military side, one of the things he has done is try to get all the troops home. He wants us out of Afghanistan. Now that'll leave it to that country to figure out, and it likely goes back to what it was 20 years ago, but it'll be a tremendous failure. I think, politically, look what happened when Lyndon Johnson tried to pull troops out of Vietnam. He ended up losing his presidency over it. But I don't think there's any reason to have troops in these places. And 2,500 troops in Syria is not keeping the world safe for democracy there either. So, if Congress wants to approve it, that's the other thing. Congress has not stepped in the game and approved any of these things. I think that would be the other side to it. But I just have seen us project power in the future with our Navy, our strategic weapons, and go from there, and not necessarily have troops in these places where it's likely they're going to be engaging.
Understood. I'm going to whip around a little bit here for you, too. Again, we're joined by former Army Major Mike Lyons joining us. You've heard him on the radio, probably in your city. I think you've been pretty much in every big city by now, right, Mike?
I have been. I've been all over the country, on the West Coast, Louisville, and Texas, and a lot of different places. It's been a privilege.
I'm wondering, I'm not sure how closely you followed this, but one of the major hits in Massachusetts during this pandemic was the Holyoke Soldiers Home, a home for veterans out in Western Massachusetts. I know that story ends up making national news and all that, but I just wonder, we've had so many conversations on this show with veterans and about not taking care of our veterans. How much does that disappoint you when you see something like that?
Yeah, it does. The same thing in New York City with just nursing homes in particular, and now the kind of the cover up is starting on that. But veterans are of the group, especially the older ones that have those comorbidities, and they are at risk. I think there's a lot of things we didn't know a lot about the virus back in March and February, March, April timeframe. So some Monday morning quarterbacks going there, but I think you could say just by common sense that these individuals with the respiratory factor of this kind of disease, that they were going to be at risk. And so we learned the hard way, and I think that hopefully we won't make those mistakes in the future. But again, having said that, to me, it's the Vietnam veteran. We still have not taken care of that group like we should. There was 2 million or so folks that went and served in Vietnam. In most cases, were not volunteers. The ones that decided to go could have probably got out of it some way, and they went and they've come home and they have different kinds of, they were exposed to Agent Orange. They were exposed to things that we need to make sure that we take care of. And it's on their backs, frankly, today that the current veteran has the service that they have because of how poorly that group was treated. And now at least veterans, coming up on Veterans Day here on Wednesday, veterans are treated much better.
I had somebody who a service member who treated a lot of the Vietnam veterans coming back here. He actually he's from Newburyport and just walked across the country a few months ago trying to raise awareness for veterans and veterans issues. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but one thing that stuck with me was he was really pushing for more veterans to be in political power. He wants more veterans running for certain offices. I just wonder what your take is on that. Do we need more veterans to, whether it be running for Congress or the Senate or whatever? Would you like to see more of that?
Well, there's a group that actually ran, I think 20 veterans ran. I think only 6 ran that were able to be successful. I know in Massachusetts, Seth Moulton is one of the congressmen. He's a veteran. He likely probably I think he got reelected. So
he's actually my congressman here out of Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah, he's Democrat, which is fine. It's just, the bottom line. But I also think we have to be careful. And I think of the World War II generation, again, when 12 million people served, that population was larger. I think that it does help when you get a veteran there, but it's got to be the right veteran. It's got to be someone that's got the passion for the politics and is going to want to do the right things. I think that we don't have the same, the military also has become family business. There's a lot of people that are in the military. I'm a West Pointer, a lot of classmates who've got their children went into the Army. I know I completely failed as an Army parent. My son is currently an ensign in the Navy. He's on the USS Cole, serving the Navy there. So, but again, I think that we have to do what we can to keep representation up.
That's going to make the football game interesting when we have tailgating return, right?
Yeah, one day a year we're not on the same side, but we'll see how that goes. But
are you gonna break it off? You can't even tailgate together. There'll be no communication on that day.
Yeah, well, that's he's hopefully it comes up for it. Actually, the game this year is going to be at West Point, and there'll be no guests and stuff. But we'll watch it. We'll watch closely. We'll see what happens.
Life in a pandemic, obviously, and how about that? That's another thing I wanted to ask you about because we talk about so many of these hard hit areas, and I think sometimes, and quite honestly, I think sometimes we forget about the military and dealing with COVID because usually young, strong, the fittest of the fit, they'll be okay. But the military has been far from, breezing through this thing. This has been tough working in the military in a pandemic.
No, it has been. And it, like anything else, like politics, in that it all comes down to the local level. And for example, the Navy, they've got different challenges because there's no way around it. The sailors on those ships are in close quarters. They just can't, keep them in. So, the ones that are back here, for example, that are not out deployed, which some of them have been deployed for 270 days and haven't hit a port. So they literally been out at sea for 270 days. You talk about losing your mind if you're not careful. But some of them here, when they work close quarters in on the ships and then they go back home, there's a likelihood that they could transmit the disease that way. So the local commanders have had to be very draconian about how they treat sailors, make sure that they're quarantined if there's any kinds of issues there. Army, same thing. If they're not out training, they're local, and when they're local in the economy, then they have access to the virus, and it can easily spread because of the close quarters you are in the military.
I was thinking about this when we were just talking about Army, Navy too. On a more serious note, how much cooperation is there between the branches? I mean, you all have your rivalries and that sort of thing, but is there a lot of connection working with each other, or is that kind of a not so much?
Yeah, it happens at the strategic level. There's not a lot at the kind of downtown level or the kind of the execution phase. A lot of it's more strategic and if you're involved. And really where the fight comes in is at the general officer level at Congress when it comes to funding, because each of them have got to get funded differently. And that's where, like, for example, the Navy is easy to get funded right now. The Navy projects power. The Navy is going to continue to do that. Air Force, the same thing. I think the Army sometimes is struggling for a mission. Right now, the Army doesn't know where the enemy is, and it's the biggest of all the branches. It supports a lot. It's a little bit of a, there's a lot of government contracting that goes into what the military buys. But when you get a chance to work, though, the other branches, it's usually a lot of fun. It's really at the high levels.
You talked about a lot of the specific issues here that would change under a President Biden White House. I wonder, when you take a global look at it, what is the view of the United States right now? Are we still the superpower, the envy of the world? What do you see when you talk to your friends around the world?
Yeah, no, we are. We continue to be that. However, you got to look back in history and think about countries that thought they were the superpower at the time, and the reality was that they weren't. Like, think about 1940, for example. If you saw the movie Dunkirk, it was a good example of that. At that point on what is it, February, or May 30th of 1940, the most powerful military in the world was the French. Well, as soon as the Dunkirk situation happens and the British leave the continent and the French get basically run over, well, that just flipped overnight. Well, we don't want to have that happen to us, because the Chinese now could potentially be an adversary for us. And so we don't want to have a war with China. I don't even know what that looked like, where that would take place. But Russia in particular also has nuclear weapons, and so they have that same capability as well. So we've got to look at countries that are existential threats to the U.S., recognize that a switch could flip, and while we believe we've got all this power, kind of like we thought the Soviet Union had during the Cold War, as it turns out, they were a paper tiger.
Is Russia? I mean, it seems like every election, just because of what happened 4 years ago, it seems like first thing I saw today when I woke up was Vladimir Putin still will not congratulate Biden. He's waiting for this to be done. Right. It seems like every time there's an election or a big moment like this, it's what does Putin and Russia say? Yeah. Your view on Russia, your view on American-Russian relations right now?
Well, so Russia is a regional threat, and that is they threaten Eastern Europe and probably Western Europe, and it's only U.S. nuclear power that keeps them from happening. And so the Germans, for example, and some of these NATO countries, to Donald Trump's point, have not funded their military like they should have, knowing full well that the United States, with its nuclear arsenal, would just go after Russia and go deep inside of Russia if they decided to do anything. And that's gone on for 30 years. And the fact that, the Germans buy natural gas from the Russians, they rely on it because they went and closed all their nuclear facilities in an attempt to, save the climate or something. But the bottom line is they've just hurt themselves strategically. And so we've allowed it to happen, and we get talked into things. I think previous administrations, the last one in particular, in the Obama-Biden administration, got talked into a lot of things that were not in the best interest of the United States. And that's why a guy, Donald Trump, gets elected, puts America first. But Russia does have the capacity to roll 400, 500,000 troops, ground troops, through Eastern and Western Europe. And I read a report that said they could be through there within 60 hours. I mean, that's 5 days. I mean, like, it would take no time, but it would only be U.S. nuclear capability that would stop them.
Again, we're joined here by former Army Major Mike Lyons. Nice enough to take a few minutes here post-election day anyway. We're a week away. This could go on for a while. Let me get your thoughts on that too. Is this one long, drawn-out process? What are the people close to the president telling him for these coming weeks?
I think they're telling him he's going to have to stay tough if they think they can get some of these ballots thrown out. I think, though, unlike what we saw 20 years ago with the Bush versus Gore, we just have a hyper-energized media and social media environment, and that it looks like it's been a fait accompli. It looks like Joe Biden is going to be the president. He's starting a COVID task force. He's acting presidential, and this thing could be overturned. So we're getting out in front of a lot of different things. I think the people around him are still telling him. I think Donald Trump
Likely could be a first, term president, but given what he's done, but we've got to see. There's 70 million people that still voted for him, so we've got to see what's the result's going to be.
2020 has packed a lot with it. We've had racial issues and protests on the streets in that regard. Obviously, a pandemic is the big umbrella backdrop here.
Yeah.
I wonder, there's been a lot of stuff. There's kneeling, the controversies, there's arguments about playing the national anthem. I wonder, as somebody who served our country, who has put your life on the line in combat zones, seen the best of the best and probably some of the worst situations fighting out there. I wonder, when you see this stuff playing out back here on the homeland, whether it be kneeling for the flag, or a lot of the people I talk to that have served our country say that's what we fought for, was so people could have those rights to do those things.
Yeah.
Others I can see genuinely kind of pissed off about it. They don't like seeing that. Where do you fall on that? I'm sure you see it all too.
Yeah, it's funny because I try to model myself after the Vietnam veterans that I lived with when I was in Fort Knox. When I first in the military in the 1980s, I lived in a neighborhood that was surrounded by Vietnam vets, and they just were quiet, veterans that didn't wear it on their shoulder. And because they chose to serve and they went and did it. I'm disappointed anytime things like that get politicized. I'm disappointed, but people do have the right to express themselves how they choose. Just like then I would have the right not to go to a football game if that's the way it's going to be. I mean, up at West Point, for example, you bring a college in and they decide to not kneel for the national anthem at the military academy. That's going to be a problem for what's kind of going on there. So, but me personally, I can't make anybody love this country anymore. I think that people who hate our country or hate Donald Trump or hate anybody, I can't, that we're not changing that either. So there's nothing we can do. All we can do is we hope that there's baseline levels of respect that everybody has for each other.
Did you ever go into a mission overseas, wherever it may be, wherever in the world it may be, did you always know clearly what you were fighting for, why this mission, where this would pay off tactically, or were there times when you were told to do something, you trust that order from above and you go?
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of a general order, there was never a time when I wasn't clear about what we were doing. In fact, I could tell you that, when we went to Desert Storm, we sat in the desert for a while and we weren't sure there was support from Congress. Then all of a sudden the switch flipped again. And next thing you know, we saw tremendous support. But I will tell you another story. During combat, we were given these PB tablets, and these were tablets that were used that were supposed to enhance our reaction to a nuclear or a chemical attack. And I looked at these tablets and I said, you know what, this is the Agent Orange of this war. They gave us a lot of experimental shots. They weren't sure what we were exposed to. Like for example, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of that Saudi Arabian desert between Iraq and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, there are literally, camel fields of carcasses. I mean, so the biological hazards we were exposed to at certain times was probably pretty amazing. And so we try to stay away from them, but you're just exposed to them. Anyway, we had these PB tablets, and they were designed to help us in our response to chemical attacks. And I looked at this and said, you know what, I'm just not going to take this one this time. I know we were ordered to take them. And then I also told my men, I said, guys, you can take this if you want, but I'm not going to take it because I think that I'm not sure it's going to do us any good. We're young, and it's not going to be something that I think is going to help us. Well, as it's turned out here, one of the things about Gulf War syndrome that they have is potentially caused by those tablets that guys took back 30 years ago.
Wow. Fascinating.
So I'm not saying I was right back then, but it just turned out to be a little bit prescient. Again, I just looked at it and said, I'm healthy. If someone's attacking me with a nerve agent, it's not going to be good anyway. And this one thing is not going to necessarily save my life. So I just didn't think I wanted to put it in my body at the time.
Wow. And can I also ask, why are there camel carcasses? I feel like I can't let that go without.
No, I mean, you're in the middle of the desert of, this is one of the most austere places on the planet. You get outside of the United States, and I've just seen places that go miles and miles and miles of just nothing. And these were places where Saudis would ever dump their garbage, dump camels, they dump whatever they have to do. And we had no idea where they were or what was going on until we actually came upon them. So it's literally hundreds of miles. One of the things that won the war for us back then was not just the technology of the equipment, of the rockets and stuff. It was the GPS technology.
we had the ability to go anywhere in the desert with a GPS, a satellite system. And then one of the things we captured an Iraqi general officer, and we asked him, it's like, what were you thinking? Like, why didn't you think we were going to do this? And the Iraqi said, we thought that you guys were going to get lost out in that desert because we train out there all the time. We get lost all the time. There's no monuments. There's no way you can kind of figure out where you're going very easily. But with a GPS, all you did was plot waypoints. I could show you my map when I was back there. All my map was a grid square, because all I did was plot points between grid squares. So I was good at math, so it worked out in that regard. But normally the way you navigate is with, mountain terrain and streets and a lot of other things. All that went out the window during that fight.
Man, I have to ask a follow-up to that too. What is it like when you capture a general? That has to be, just a very simplistic terms, that has to be one of the strangest moments anybody would ever live through.
Yeah, it is. And he was trying not to be a general, and then we found out he was a general. The thing is, by the third day in that war we were going through, we came upon whole positions of Iraqis that abandoned their equipment. I'll never forget one that we got into the position where there was like food in the Mermite cans. Like they were literally having lunch while we were rolling through, and they decided, the Americans are coming. So they headed north. So they just kind of went away from our direction. But we picked up stragglers along the way, and we would throw them. And all we were doing is passing them through, passing them back. And one of them, as it turns out, was a general officer.
Wow. And so obviously that's a bigger prize as far as capturing somebody. What's the, are you guys literally like talking to these guys? Like, is it?
Yeah, I had a translator. I was lucky. I had a kid in my battery that spoke some kind of like Farsi a little bit. So I was able to at least communicate with anybody that we captured. It got to the point though, we were so overwhelmed because we were so far forward. We couldn't take them with us. We couldn't do any of that. So we just had to let them go. Or we just kept saying, well, keep walking that way and somebody will pick you up. What you see sometimes in war movies now, you look at war movies, and I watch war movies differently having been in combat. It's like, you got that part right. You didn't get that part right. But that's one of those things that we did.
Yeah. What war movies have gotten it right?
Saving Private Ryan, for example, was probably the best one I've ever seen. I know it's going on 20 years with that movie, but everything was right about that in terms of they had that situation where they told the guy, keep going that way, go in that direction. Yeah. But the thing that got me about Saving Private Ryan was the sky. The sky in a combat zone is something that isn't ever ingrained in my mind about how it looks. It's just smoke. In the middle of the day, there's just so much smoke because there's so much ammunition going off. There's so many things going on. The sky is always something that they got right in that movie.
When we talk about having those prisoners that you've captured, is there an element of, and this is kind of messed up, I know, because it's the people that you're fighting as well, but is there an element once you capture them that, you know what, we're in the same line of work here. I know what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, you turn the compassion button on. You actually, I could show you pictures. The first kind of group we captured, were kind of tying them up. We didn't know what to do with them. All they wanted was something to eat and something to drink. They were starving. I mean, so, what are we going to do? Not do that. So we gave them water, we gave them food, gave them cigarettes. I mean, they're soldiers. I mean, and we caught the initial guys that were, back then Saddam had tried to reinforce a larger military, and he put his worst troops kind of closer to the front, and the Republican Guards, we finally caught them by the third day. But by the initial first day troops were just guys that just had hardly anything. They literally were lucky to have survived the B-52 bombings that were on their heads for the past 35 days.
Wow, that is incredible. That's just, talk about firsthand experience that we could never imagine. Here again, former Army Major Mike Lyons is joining us. A couple more minutes here. One other thing I wanted to ask, that I know every time we talked about, liberating Iraq and liberating those people, you kept hearing, these are good people that live there. And what is that balance like? I'm sure maybe you came across a neighborhood at some point, and maybe you see kids. I don't know,
lots of kids. Yeah, lots of kids.
That must really kind of mess with a soldier. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and because I remember back at the time, I saw kids that were the age of my niece and nephew, and it's just one of those things where just be grateful you live in the United States. I mean, giving water to kids that don't know where they're going to get their next drink of water from in these other countries. So again, when you go overseas and you fight for your country and you're in the middle of that, you have a complete different appreciation. Of having a bad day, and the fact that I came home from that is
to me, I'll never accomplish anything more than bringing 120 men to combat and bringing all 120 men home. There's nothing I'm ever going to do in my life that's going to top it. And every day since then, to me, is a blessing. And I really feel that way. And I'm never, it is what it is. It's because of what we saw and what we were exposed to.
I know so many. I know it's not something I've never heard you say that before, but 120 out of 120 is pretty incredible. Who's your boss that gives you kind of that wink or the thumbs up and appreciates that? There has to be that moment, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of made that up myself. It's the guy upstairs, I guess. If I meet my maker someday, I could tell him that I know that we were trained. I know what we were ready. I know. Look, I've had soldiers lost in my units from training accidents. The military is a hard place. It's a dangerous place. People are killed all the time in training accidents. And the fact that we were able to deploy them all there and bring them home is just a testament to, competence and commitment, making sure that we knew what we were doing and make sure we were committed to doing it exactly the way that we said we were going to do it.
And so much of your fighting was, as you mentioned, with Saddam Hussein involved. What was was there ever chatter among even maybe some of your prisoners? Did you get to know him a little bit better than maybe most would in a weird way?
No, most of the people that we captured were against Saddam. They would make more. They were trying. I guess it was similar to trying to just survive, because they perceived us kind of hating them. That they thought that we were going to come in and just blow everything up and destroy everything. They had no idea that what we're actually going to be like once we get there. And that's not to say again that there were certain units it doesn't happen to. But the bottom line is they wanted to say that they were not necessarily on Saddam's side as well. But at that point, we were just trying to get it through and get it over with.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is fascinating stuff. I'm glad we ran through all that. I know we touched on a lot. We usually end this show with some quick. You have to say the first thing that comes to mind. Just very random topics. You good? 60 seconds?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Favorite city in the world?
It's my hometown, New York. As much as it's being crushed right now, it's so sad to see, but there's no place in the world like New York.
Yankees fan?
Every day. I'm born in the Bronx. I don't apologize for it. I've been through the ups and the downs. Born in the Bronx, so.
We can understand these things. Don't worry. Favorite class in school?
Oh boy, I'd probably say economics, and I wish I took a lot more of them. I think if I give advice on my kids these days. I say take economics courses, learn that theory, and then apply it when you get out there.
All right. Favorite musician?
Probably Billy Joel. Again, grew up with him in the 70s, watched the transformations take place. But I've been listening to music on the radio my whole life. I was a big fan back in the 70s of album-oriented rock, WPLJ in New York. So I'm pretty good at. I used to win a lot of those trivia contests for music contests back then.
Have you taken in the Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden thing yet?
Yeah, I've been there a couple times. I've watched Billy Joel a couple times at MSG. He does it differently every time, but it's just it's a time machine. It's a travel, it's a travel back in time, and it's he really works nostalgia in a way that I don't think a lot of other people can. He'll take you right back to the 1970s.
You told us the favorite war movie. What's let's get away from that class. A non-war movie. What's the favorite movie?
Oh, I like The Rock, believe it or not, by Nicolas Cage. I like kind of crazy movies that don't really make any sense, but things always work out at the end.
Rest in peace, Sean Connery there too, right?
Yeah, Sean Connery. Obviously, I've got a Sean Connery impression. I'm sure people walked around all day doing their Sean Connery impressions. Shelley One Ping, right? I mean, Clear and Present Danger. All those are good movies, and The Hunt for Red October. So. Most
you've seen a lot of the world that a lot of people haven't. What's the most beautiful terrain that maybe we wouldn't suspect out there?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I've traveled across country. I've been to every part of the U.S. Kind of top to bottom. I've fought and defended it, but I don't know. I'm a beach guy. At the end of the day, I probably liked Hawaii, or I liked even the shores of Ireland. If you go to certain parts of Ireland, I think that are beautiful. And so at the end of the day, when you get to see what the creation has been made, you kind of count your blessings. So, favorite pandemic quarantine activity? Oh, I've been going crazy, making crazy videos for my work as a part of my thing. And I figured out a way to use artificial intelligence to age myself So I've been doing different videos with me, aged with beards and all this other kind of stuff. This is the next, security problem where you're going to be able to take your face and your head and put it on something. It's going to look different. But I've been learning a lot about Final Cut Pro. I mean, I'm an editor there, but using artificial intelligence to create pretty cool videos in Final Cut Pro.
I can tell you're kind of serious about that. You actually see a real issue down the road with that, right?
Oh, there's no question. Just from propaganda, just from the way, I'm a greatest strengths is greatest weakness guy, right? And so something comes out that's going to be great. It's going to do it's going to be very powerful. Someone's going to figure out a way to flip it up and make it a weakness to something else. And, you get somebody creating a false film of Donald Trump or Joe Biden saying something that we know is false. It takes off in this internet world. And next thing you know, we've got chaos. And I think that's, we've got to get Twitter has been a great example. Like the strength of Facebook and all these things is they've brought us all together. But the other downside of it is I think it's also made us very divisive.
Final two with former Army Major Mike Lyons. What is the thing that people don't realize about the American soldier's mindset? What is it that we don't know?
I tell you, the American soldier just gets up every day, wants to do a good job, wants everybody to know that they're the guy or gal on the wall. They're the guy that's willing to do what it takes. They want to serve their country. You got to be a volunteer today. You got to raise your hand. And there's nothing else we do a lot for veterans now. I think it's tremendous, but you serve for the person to the left and to the right of you. You're in the foxhole with that person. That's why we fight. You join the military for your country, but you fight for the guy for the left and to the right of you.
That's well said. And the best career advice. I like this. We have a lot of high schoolers that are part of this show. Will join this show sometimes. And I think that's part of our big listenership too. So with that age group in mind, what is the best career advice you ever got?
Yeah, do what you love. The first thing and whatever you do first, do it great. Do it for 3 or 4 years. No matter what, you're going to get all the lousy jobs. It's all going to come to you. Do them the best you can, but love what you do. If you love football, you love golf, you love whatever you love, figure out a way to do what you love. If you do that, you won't work a day in your life.
I think I've seen pictures on Twitter of you. You're a big golfer, right?
My daughter is. My daughter she's better than me, but I am a golfer. I try to go out play golf, and I'm trying to get her launched. She's a senior in college right now. I'm trying to get her launched, and I'm giving her that advice right now. Same with my son. He's an ensign in the Navy. He'll serve for 4 years. He'll decide whether to stay or not if he loves it. But if he doesn't love it, I want him to do something he loves.
It just reminded me, you posted a video of your daughter with a sunrise or sunset. I can't remember what it was.
Yes, hitting the ball. Yeah.
And she had a drive, and she has a swing that I envy. All I want is that swing.
No, she can play. She's a little sandbagger though, because you bring her out and everybody thinks she's a woman and she can't play, and she can play. It's a really, I'm proud of her. So proud. She speaks. She's 10 times the student I was. It's like, I failed with my son. I'm failing with her. She could do way more than I've ever could imagine. She speaks Mandarin. She speaks German. I can hardly speak English. I mean, so I'm just so proud of her, and she's done a great job, and she's going to make a great contribution. And I hope everybody out there does that too.
Well, as long as she's taking dad's money on the golf course, that's okay, right?
Every day.
Former Army Major Mike Lyons, this was a pleasure, man. I hope you enjoyed it. I sure did.
Drew, thanks for having me.
All right, man. All right, how about that? Former Army Major Mike Lyons, combat veteran. I hope you enjoyed those stories, because there was a lot there, from time in combat of positions that I could never imagine myself being in to present day military stuff and what we're looking ahead for the next years. I thought that was great. And I hope you don't mind me kind of derailing and talking about his time serving either, because some of that on the ground stories I always find it's stories that you only get when you're talking to service members. And how often do you talk to somebody that served in Iraq? And I don't know. I hope you enjoyed that. I thought those stories were pretty good, and they weren't all pretty. So I hope you enjoyed that. And that's good. The world has changed a little bit. President-elect. We'll see how the rest of this election, post-election weeks plays out. But that's the world we're in right now. Hopefully everybody's staying safe. I know the pandemic surge is on here in Massachusetts. It is around my community. I know that. The numbers aren't great day after day. So stay safe, everybody. Wear that mask outside. Wash your hands. Social distance. No partying. All right? My name's Drew Moholland. Until next time, live from Drew's house. Bye-bye now.